Much of Drizzt Do'Urden's story is defined by the adversaries who have challenged him across his 2 centuries of life. Some of these foes represented the injustice and prejudice he would face again and again. Others were warlords who marched armies against the friends and homes he came to love. Some were something else entirely, minds bent by obsession, vengeance, or magic. And then there were those who wanted to test their mettle against his blades. Each was relentless in their own way. Today we'll explore 5 figures across the Legend of Drizzt, each one testing his skill, his convictions, and his will to endure. I have long-form videos following Artemis Entrere, Kryn Shinabon, Jarlaxle, and Bregan D'Aerith, so in this video I'll be covering 5 less talked about foes that mark different turning points and challenges for Drizzt. They represent a wide array of villains from the Sword Coast and are essential to his story. Roddy McGristle was a mountain man out of Maldabar, known for bounty hunting orcs, but disliked and mistrusted by most who knew him. He spent more time hunting in the mountains than living among the people of his town, and when Maldabar paid bounties on orc ears, Roddy collected more than the rest of the town combined. He carried a battle-worn axe called Bleeder and commanded 2 dogs trained to track anything that bled. Roddy heard a farm boy's tale of a drow sighting near the blueberry patch outside Maldabar. There, the quickling Tifanis, unseen and unknown to any of them, stole a scimitar from Drizzt's hand, cutting him, and the drow's cry of pain drew Roddy's hounds. Defending himself, Drizzt killed one of the dogs and wounded the other. Roddy charged in with Bleeder and felled a tree with his axe in the struggle, its branches tearing his face and taking his ear. The scars marked his face, but the deeper wound was to his pride, and pride was the one thing Roddy McGristle refused to live without. Tifanis delivered the stolen scimitar to his master, the Barghest Ulgulu, who used it to slaughter the Thistledown family and leave the blame at Drizzt's feet. Maldabar's grief turned to a bounty, and Roddy's private vendetta found a public cause to align with. Hunting Drizzt became his obsession. Roddy joined a search party alongside Dove Falconhand and the elf ranger Kellendil, hiding his own agenda as the signs pointed to the Barghest as the true culprit. Roddy saw that evidence with his own eyes and discarded it, because the truth would have ended his hunt. His obsession deepened, and he refused to let Drizzt be. He struck a bargain with the orc chieftain Grull, trading information for aid in cornering Drizzt at the grove of the ranger Montolio de Bruschi. The assault failed, and Roddy was taken captive, marched toward justice under guard of Kellendil. Tifanis freed Roddy in secret, and together they strangled Kellendil in the night. In that moment, Roddy revealed himself fully. He murdered a lawful captor with his bare hands rather than answer for his crimes, becoming the very thing he accused Drizzt of being. To keep Roddy away from the grove, Tifanis then lied that a warg had killed Drizzt, and Roddy, trusting him, moved on. Months later, in a tavern near Sundabar, Roddy sat hooded in the shadows, hiding his scars from the crowd. When talk turned to dark elves, strangers sought out his story, and for the first time in years, Roddy McGristle felt important again. The hunt had become the only identity he had left. Then a traveler described a cloaked stranger with skin black as coal and eyes of purple. Eyes Roddy knew were rare even among the drow, eyes he remembered staring down at him from his encounter years before. He confronted Tifanis about his lie, but let it go on the condition that they catch the drow together. The chase led them along the tunnel routes near Mirabar, where Tifanis' fear overrode his loyalty. He steered Drizzt's party into a passage guarded by a dragon, hoping the beast would finish the job. Furious at being robbed of his own vengeance, Roddy snatched up the sack carrying Tifanis inside it and beat him to death against a stone wall. He tracked the weeping friars who Drizzt had been traveling with, torturing them for information, and learned Drizzt had turned toward Icewind Dale. Bryn Shander's spokesman Cassius pointed him toward Brunner Battlehammer's valley at Kelvin's Cairn. There, Roddy cornered his quarry. seizing the young Catti-brie to draw Drizzt into the open. Drizzt disarmed him but refused the death Roddy then begged for. Roddy read that mercy as weakness, and he woke from the beating ready to resume the hunt. Then he met Brunor Battlehammer, and in the dwarf he saw no weakness at all. Brunor beat Roddy badly and drove him from the valley, and Roddy understood that if he had begged this enemy for death, Brunor would have obliged. He left Icewind Dale and troubled Drizzt no more. Roddy McGristle never had a fraction of Drizzt's combat prowess, but he was still a mighty foe. He is the first face of the prejudice Drizzt will suffer time and again on the surface, and what makes him so despicable is his willful ignorance. He convinced an entire village to arm itself against an innocent man on nothing but the word drow, needing no proof beyond the color of a stranger's skin. Drizzt's only recourse was to flee, never able to prove his innocence to the people of Maldabar. Drizzt beat Roddy by allowing him to live, proving the truth by his actions, even in the face of such injustice. Among all of Drizzt Do'Urden's enemies, none carried patience like Errtu the Balor. Where mortal foes burned out in a season or in a single duel, this demon of the abyss measured his vengeance in centuries, and that difference alone makes him one of the most dangerous names in Drizzt's long history. Errtu's obsession with Grinshinaban predates Drizzt entirely. The Balor once served the 7 liches who forged the crystal shard, and when the artifact awoke, consuming its own creators, the resulting eruption hurled Errtu back to the abyss. He spent generations hunting the relic afterward, robbed of it once by an angelic being before he ever set foot near Icewind Dale. This was a demon defined by unfinished business long before he ever encountered Drizzt. Their first clash came when the wizard Akar Kessel raised Grinshinaban's power over 10 towns. Errtu allied with Kessel only as a means to an end, waiting for the wizard's short human life to expire so he might inherit the shard outright. Drizzt knew this demon. Errtu had served the drow of Menzoberranzan in Drizzt's youth, and Drizzt remembered his true name, a name that would compel the Balor to answer his call. Drizzt used that to lure the demon into a trap disguised as diplomacy. Armed with his newly acquired Frostbrand scimitar, Icing Death, Drizzt extinguished Errtu's fire and drove him back to the abyss. The Balor left with a vow of vengeance, promising to return. The vow demanded a way home, and Errtu built one out of Drizzt's own heart. He staged an elaborate lure, a doppelganger planted aboard the Sea Sprite, and a blind seer's riddle that spoke of a prisoner in the abyss. Every clue pointed Drizzt toward the conclusion that Zaknafein, his long-dead father, suffered in Errtu's grasp. Desperate for answers, Drizzt brought the riddle to the priest Catterly, who summoned Errtu into a warded circle for questioning. The summoning itself sprang the trap. By standing present at that ritual, Drizzt willingly brought Errtu to the prime material plane, and that act alone fulfilled the terms of the banishment. The Balor departed laughing, free to answer any call, and Grinshinaban's call came soon after. Errtu raised a new Crishal Tirith out on the sea of moving ice and dared Drizzt to come claim his prisoner. Errtu fell a second time to the whole of the companions of the Hull together. Wulfgar's own hand caught the killing blow meant for Drizzt, and they banished the Balor once again. Errtu's role in the Abyss extends well beyond his own grudge. When Loth needed House Oblodra erased from Menzoberranzan, it was Errtu's fiends who dragged Kiorl Odrin screaming into the depths, and Errtu's throne that became her eternity of torment. The Balor serves as the Spider Queen's jailer as much as her agent, holding the damned she casts down and the prisoners she wishes tormented slowly rather than killed outright. Yet Errtu is loyal to nothing beyond his own vengeance. Every bargain he strikes with the Spider Queen is a means to one end, a door back to the material plane and another chance at Drizzt Do'Urden. Banishment has never stopped him, it has only taught him patience. A full century after his defeat on the Sea of Moving Ice, Errtu kept his promise and returned to Icewind Dale hunting Drizzt. only to fall to a drow blade that did not belong to Drizzt at all. The dark elf who cut him down was the weapon master Tiago Be'enri, wearing the name Do'Urden, another of Drizzt's obsessed foes. Somewhere in the abyss, Ertu most likely waits still, nursing one more humiliation, still certain that Drizzt's world owes him a reckoning it has not yet paid in full. Eliphane Tusarel was a moon elf whose entire life folded around a single blood-soaked memory. As a child in the Moonwood, she survived a drow raid that killed her mother and much of her family, saved only because a young Drizzt Do'Urden hid her beneath her mother's body rather than end her life as his kin demanded. Eliphane never knew the mercy in that act. She remembered only a blood-smeared drow with lavender eyes standing over her while everyone she loved died around her, and that image calcified into the only truth she would ever accept. Raised among a people already wary of the Dark Elves, Eliphane came to see her own survival as an open wound rather than a gift. She fixed her grief on the purple-eyed drow from that night, certain he was her mother's killer, and she swore an oath that would consume the rest of her life. When word reached the Moonwood of a drow ranger walking the surface in service of good, an ally to dwarves and men, Eliphane refused every word of it. To her, such a reputation could only be a mask. She confirmed her nightmare years later when Drizzt passed near her homeland and she recognized those same lavender eyes. She went for him with murder in her heart, and only the intervention of her kinsman, Tarathiel, held her back long enough to spare them both. He tried to tell her what he suspected, that this drow might be the very one who spared her that night. Eliphane would not hear it. From that moment forward, revenge consumed her. She buried her name along with her old life and became Lolorinel Telebrenaquiet, an elvish phrase meaning I to you as you to me, a vow of mirrored fate. She cut her hair short, hid herself behind a mask, and armed herself with the corrupted adamantine blades of drow she had slain. An onyx ring gathered onto her hand held 4 enchantments meant to give her an advantage over Drizzt once they met: speed to match his blades, endurance to survive his first strikes, invisibility to turn the tide, and a ward that would return any wound she suffered straight back into the body of whoever dealt it. Her hunt finally found its ground at Golden Cove, in the lair of the pirate Sheila Cree, where Drizzt had come to reclaim Wulfgar's stolen warhammer. Lolorinel fought at his side against the ogre guarding that den, matching his scimitars strike for strike, driven only by her refusal to let anyone else claim the kill she had spent years preparing to take. The moment the ogre fell, she turned her blades on Drizzt. Their duel matched 2 warriors who did not know each other at all. When darkness and invisibility canceled each other into a blind exchange of steel, both found their mark in the same instant, and the fire shield woven into Lolorinel's ring turned Drizzt's own killing blow back into his chest. They fell together, mirrored wounds bleeding into the same stone floor. Only then, staring across that small and terrible distance, did Drizzt see past the mask to the truth he had never been given the chance to explain. Eliphane died believing her family avenged. She never accepted that the drow who killed her was the same one who had refused to let her die. She stands among the most tragic names in Drizzt's long history, an enemy he never wronged and could not save, one whose death haunted him for years afterward. Obuld was already a king in exile when the North first learned his name. Obuld had ruled Citadel Felbar, taken from the dwarves and renamed the Citadel of Many Arrows, until war with a rival tribe drew his eye away and Emerus Warcrown reclaimed it. Obuld called that loss the greatest error of his life, and everything after was his answer to it. He absorbed scattered tribes into one banner, secured the aid of the Frost Giants through diplomacy, and heeded drow counsel for patience. Where other warlords measured strength in warriors, Obuld measured it in years. That alone made him more dangerous than any horde the spine of the world had ever produced. His transformation came after the fall of Shallows, beside the broken idol of Gruumsh the dwarves had defiled in their escape. The shamans of a dozen tribes gathered and declared, "Obuld is Gruumsh, and Gruumsh is Obuld." Stripped of his armor, painted for ceremony, Obuld broke the neck of a bull and a mountain cat with his bare hands, and the shamans raised both animals back to life around him. The orc god had blessed the ritual. Obuld, already a great warrior, became faster and stronger still. He carried the genuine blessing of his god, and he commanded an army that believed its king could not die. Drizzt hunted him through the entire war, grieving Bruenor and the companions, grieving Elefane. The drow surrendered himself to the hunter and swore Obuld's death as payment for all of it. When they finally met on a high flat stone with both armies watching, Drizzt discovered the power of Obuld's blessing. His scimitars rang off Obuld's black armor without leaving a mark. Even using the sentient sword Khazadiah driven deep into a seam at Obuld's side, Drizzt could not put him down. Obuld ripped the sword from his own body, threw it from the cliff, and invited the drow to continue. In those exchanges, Drizzt felt something he had rarely known in all his years of battle. One moment the orc fought with the fluid cunning of Artemis Entreri. The next he struck with the weight of a giant. And when Obuld finally cornered him, guessing correctly on an all-or-nothing charge, Drizzt understood with absolute clarity that he was beaten. The earth itself saved him. A drow priestess serving her own agenda split the mountainside with an earthquake and dropped both warriors into the rubble. Drizzt survived on a ledge. Obuld climbed out of the ruin and tore out the throat of the priestess who betrayed him and went back to his kingdom. Once the Treaty of Garam's Gorge was signed by Bruenor, there was peace between the orcs and dwarves, and the Kingdom of Many Arrows endured for over a century, ruled by many kings who carried Obuld's name as a title. Drizzt did not defeat Obuld in combat, and his time with the Orc King raised a question. If an orc raised in the worship of a war god could choose to build rather than burn, what did that say about every certainty Drizzt held regarding his own people? Obuld tested Drizzt's blades and fought him to a standstill, but his deeper mark on the legend was that he forced the ranger who fled the evil of Menzoberranzan to watch a supposed monster choose peace and to wonder what else the world had wrongly called impossible. Tiago Baenri was a noble son of House Baenri and the grandson of Dontrog Baenri, the legendary weapons master who died on Drizzt's blades. Young, gifted, and hungry for fame, Tiago believed a great destiny was owed to him. He carried a sword and shield forged in the primordial fire of Gauntlegram, Vidranath and Orbcress, weapons worthy of the legend he intended to become. All he needed was a deed to match them. During the Zorloran expedition to Gauntlegram, Tiago crossed paths with a cloaked drow traveling with an elf and a human and thought little of it. Later, the old blacksmith Gulfanin asked him one question: what color were the stranger's eyes? Lavender. Tiago had stood face to face with Drizzt Do'Urden, the killer of his own grandfather, and let him walk away. Gulfanin told him that his new weapons would make him a weapons master, but the head of Drizzt Do'Urden would make him a legend. The hunt consumed him, and it made him famous in ways he never expected. In Icewind Dale, the Baelor heir to attacked Bryn Shander, demanding the drow the townsfolk were sheltering. The demon believed Drizzt had returned. Instead, he found Tiago, and Tiago killed him, cleaving his skull and banishing him back to the abyss. The people of 10 Towns cheered him as a hero and raised a stone in his honor, never knowing he had come to murder the ranger who had once protected them. Tiago also became weapons master of a rebuilt House Do'Urden, Drizzt's family name raised from the dead by matron mother Quinthel as a political tool. Under that banner, he helped drive the Silver Marches to war, riding a white dragon over the walls of Sundabar and taking the head of its king while the city burned below. Refugees across the north learned to curse the name Do'Urden. Drizzt spent that entire war fighting to defend the Silver Marches, while strangers blamed him for destroying it. Drizzt and Tiago clashed twice before the end, and both fights were left unfinished. Their aerial battle above the Cerbran ended when Drizzt's arrow cut the strap of Tiago's saddle, dropping him from his dragon miles above the field. Their duel in the tunnels of Gauntlegrim ended when Duimh'El, Tiago's own companion, stabbed him and turned her blade on Drizzt, wounding him so gravely he believed himself dead. Every meeting between them left the question open, which of them was truly the better swordsman? That answer came in Menzoberranzan in the chapel of the old House Do'Urden compound, the very ground where Drizzt's family had once ruled and fallen. The confrontation was staged from the shadows above, with a handmaiden of Loth herself watching. Before Tiago ever entered the room, an enchantment seized Drizzt's mind and dragged him back across the decades, forcing him to relive his father's final moments. Drizzt knelt at the altar and watched Zaknafein die again, sacrificed to Loth in his place, and he reached for a ghost his hand passed through. Into that grief walked Tiago Be'enre, sword drawn, certain he had found a broken man. He found the hunter instead. Drizzt carried the image of his dying father into the fight, and grief sharpened him where it was meant to shatter him. Tiago fought brilliantly. He trapped both of Drizzt's scimitars against his shield, ripped them from the ranger's hands, and swung the killing blow he had chased for decades. But Drizzt had already drawn Tolmaril, freed in a heartbeat from an enchanted belt buckle Catti-brie had crafted for him. The arrow took Tiago before his sword ever landed. He died mid-swing, certain he had won, beside the very altar where Zaknafein had been sacrificed. These 5 foes challenged Drizzt in a variety of ways, and all of them tested his resolve. Roddy McGristle was his first test against the evils of prejudice and hatred, and Drizzt would not kill him, even though it probably would have made Faerun a better place. Heir 2 is the embodiment of evil, a demon Drizzt has been forced to face time and time again. His schemes, meant to break Drizzt, only made him stronger. Eliphain represents what Drizzt believes is his greatest failure. The girl he saved as his kin and culture tried to turn him into a weapon grew to hunt him. Even as they both lay dying after their battle, Drizzt begged Catti-brie and Bruenor to save Eliphain, but they saved Drizzt instead. Eliphain is a wound he will carry forever. Obuld may have been the most terrifying martial combatant Drizzt ever faced. While their final battle was cut short, by Drizzt's own words, he was defeated. But through Obuld, Drizzt further changed his perspective on the so-called evil races of the world. This too changed him forever. Drizzt was unaware of the nefarious deeds of Tiago Be'enre for years, but when his own name was tainted by Tiago's crimes, Drizzt worked without complaint to rebuild his reputation, fighting and killing Tiago only because he had no choice. If you want to get my custom D&D 5.5e stat blocks for all of these characters, check out the Drow Historian Patreon, where I add 2 new Legend of Drizzt stat blocks or magic items every month, along with 2 bonus podcasts covering the entire Legend of Drizzt series. If you want to learn more about Drizzt's greatest rival, Artemis Entreri, I cover all of their early encounters in my video, The Beginnings of Artemis Entreri. I also cover Evenel the Eternal, the first matron mother of Menzoberranzan, in my video on the greatest villains of the Forgotten Realms. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week for more lore from the Forgotten Realms and the Legend of Drizzt.